you're not seriously enough. So, anyways, I really, really am scared. And at the same time, I'm upset that there are opportunists when it comes to businesses and government that are taking advantage of this crisis. I have a moral dilemma because of the publicity stuff that I've been trying to do that I've been putting off for various reasons, most of them out of my control. That this happens to be the time when a lot of people are staying home. So I have to deal with that moral dilemma. And I'm also kind of impressed at how a lot of people are handling this too. That there are some companies that I've thought were really evil, that are actually doing some things that are hurting them financially in order to serve people. And that's pretty amazing. And I've also seen some governments around the world who I think have taken more responsibility than we have. And one example is that you watch enough TV, you'll see footage from Asia and different places around the world where they got people lined up and they're just simply taking their temperature. It's just a preliminary thing to see if they need more testing. And then they show Americans. And this is what's weird, is that we kind of want to do it our own way, And so I called the local hotline for the state that I'm currently staying in. For one thing, they didn't even know the name of the county, and I asked the guy if he was a volunteer. And all he wanted to do was collect information and then refer me over to a thing to do some kind of video conference with some kind of healthcare provider to ask me what my symptoms were, which I didn't have a dry cough or a fever, which are the main symptoms of this thing, which I thought was really weird. And then I asked if there were testing areas nearby, and this guy couldn't even tell me that. So I looked online, and there were some that had been scheduled that were touring around the area, and those had left days ago. And then I had to look deeper online, which is funny. It's like, okay, why are we the ones who should be searching online when they have a hotline of people that could be giving you this information, for one thing? And they had limited hours, and I saw on TV how they were doing it. And it didn't look like something I thought was productive. The other thing was, in order just to talk to somebody, you had to give them a lot of personal information, which I think, from their perspective, if they're suspicious of somebody who could be some kind of biohazard, I would think that it would be advantageous for them to get as much information as they can from as many people as they can. From the perspective of the public, we have a government that is constantly triggering most of the American people to get us to be scared of them and to not trust them. And for them to want this much information to just get our foot in the door is really scary to a lot of people. And if their goal is to scare most of the American public, especially those of us that are on the left wing of politics and religion and culture, is they're doing a damn good job at doing it, I think, more than most countries. And they're hinting things in mainstream media that gives us the impression that it very well could be okay to invade people's privacy in a way that we've never seen before. And that there very well could be shortage riots. And that could be another opportunity where the government and the military and stuff, and I heard this term here recently, paramilitary. A lot of these folks are being called, especially now that it's kind of a soggy season. There are a lot of firefighters that are being called all over the country. I don't know why they're moving them. They should keep them where they're at. But they are mobilizing and they are getting ready for certain things. And then if you hear the media when it comes to the far left type folks, they're making some pretty good points. I usually don't like the far left media, but occasionally I listen into a community radio station or something like that. And they're focusing on, hey, What about folks that are incarcerated? Not only that, what about these undocumented workers, to use a progressive term, that are not being treated carefully when it comes to this pandemic? And we need to be more civil, compassionate, and responsible when it comes to these people that are being held in some kinds of camps and things like that. And that's pretty sad if it is going on, or if it just could be another opportunity for the left to find something to scream and yell about, which there's always things that we can find. So it's hard to say, but at the same time, I think that probably it is going on, that there are folks that are being held against their will unfairly when they could be allowed to be with their families here in the United States, or to be with their families back in Mexico. Which leads me to another thing is, well, how convenient that this is somehow targeting the poor, which comes to, homeless people and folks that live in what we would call unsanitary environments, senior citizens, who is overpopulated, especially poor senior citizens, and these undocumented workers. And if you just make a list of all the people that the current administration and the American right wing would not necessarily want to get rid of, but if they had an opportunity to, there's a list of demographics that are being more affected by this crisis than others. Now, sadly, that's not always true. We have a lot of famous people, especially those that are baby boomers, politicians on the left and right. A lot of celebrities are now testing positive and things like that. And it's making me think that, this would be pretty hard to, pay off all these people to lie about testing positive for this kind of stuff. So chances are what they're saying is true when it comes to those who are infected and those who aren't. And of course, when it comes down to the fact that we don't have a lot of testing available, it is very difficult where I'm staying to get tested. And they're not making it easy to find them. And they're not making you feel safe when it comes to being tested. And we've been seeing this thing happening for 4 years now, trying to gain a lot of power over the American public. But here's the thing, is that I was introduced to right-wing culture in my early 20s, and right away I found that they are working very hard to put people in power that support their views and their agenda, which is religious freedom when it comes to Bible stuff. So that's what they call religious freedom. Family-friendly stuff. A lot of this family-friendly term means anti-gay when you really look into it. So sexual minorities are threatened. And there is a sort of racial thing going on, but really I've talked to a lot of Trumpies. Most of them don't come off as being overly racist, in my opinion. However, when it comes to them freaking out about Muslims, freaking out about Mexicans, that's pretty sad that a lot of Trumpies that I love and respect do have a lot of opinions about certain minorities who are endangered and who need protection, who need support, and they are very threatened under this administration, and that's pretty sad. Now, me being on disability, being closeted gay, but public about it, and other aspects in my life that are looked down upon by folks who have a lot of influence right now in this administration, make me feel very unsafe about how long am I going to be able to stay in this country. And I just am taking it one day at a time and trying to focus on my work, which is very hard because I have really tried to put a price tag on my work and especially my story. If my multimedia art projects, my weird comedy, crude stuff, my artsy fartsy meditative weirdness doesn't appeal to anybody, I think anybody who has gone through and survived things or needs to survive things that I've survived, which a lot of men don't, especially sexual minorities and things like that. I think that my story has value, even if my art doesn't. So I've had to put a sort of a value on what I think I deserve as far as the exposure that I would need in order to have the power to have, and I use this analogy, is there are artists that have little canvases and there are artists that are gifted with big canvases. And there are some artists that are big canvas artists that for whatever reason, they don't have the power to have those kind of resources. So, I'm talking way too longer than I thought I was going to. And I don't know what else to say at this point. It's just that I am glad that as of now, I feel more safe than a lot of people that I know. And as far as my mental health is concerned, I'm still taking my sleepy days. I'm doing my movement meditation. I'm still doing most of my self-care. And I started getting back into some therapeutic art stuff and all that. And things trigger me. I stay away from the news sometimes. And then it helps me to watch the news. I just have to take it in doses. And I have to read between the lines, and I have to stay open-minded that things could be a lot worse than what we see, and things could not be quite as bad as what we see at this point. It's just that if we were to have some type of, like the Orwell 1984 Big Brother type thing that would go on. This is the best opportunity for somebody who would want to get away with creating an environment, whether it's in the United States, whether it's all of North America, Western culture, whether it's the whole world, to create a system that takes way too much control over people. And I have some theories about what could be motivating that, what could be draining the resources of people when it comes to our power being drained. And what is it about these corporate empires that are so completely out of control that we have tried to do things and to set laws in place to regulate folks, and they just go to another country and they just wreak havoc, One in particular I hear about all the time is Monsanto, but there are a lot of other companies. There are companies that we don't hear about a lot that own a lot of corporations, that have a lot of political power. And if they are in any way involved in either creating, enabling, or even trying to cope with this global pandemic, I would say that most of these huge corporate empires are either having something to do with this or they're taking opportunities based on this. And that is something that I try to stay open-minded about, but I don't try to think about every hour of my waking day because it would really freak me out. Because when I talk to conspiracy people, I just wish that folks would say, I'm a conspiracy theorist. These are theories. This isn't the truth. This isn't based on hard evidence just because I'm flooded with information on the web and I get around my peers and we all talk about airplanes and aliens and governments and all these things, and they all have reasonable explanations behind them. Although some of them are very sensational, they still have reasonable explanations to talk about some very sensational things that really discredit them. And so every time I talk to somebody who sounds like they're in conspiracy theory, I try to ask them some questions about whether they think this is the truth, whether they think these are facts. And then I kind of know who I'm dealing with. And I see how credible it is. If they're saying this is the truth, you got to go to this website, you got to watch this 3-hour YouTube video that this kid made in his basement that everybody's watching and stuff like that. And then I say, well, there's probably a little bit of truth to that, but some people want a lot of power over others. And that's what the whole conspiracy thing is all about, is governments and corporations, and whether there are beings from other world that want a lot of control over humanity. And the irony is that conspiracy guys, whether they admit that they are conspiracy people or not, whether they admit these are theories or whether they think they're the truth, because when you get bombarded by something, you have these cultic effects that really get people to think that some of these sensational ideas are the truth. Well, here's the irony, is that if their theories are about ways that folks can overpower, influence humanity, then why is it that most of these conspiracy guys act like they're basically doing the same thing, that they want to propagate their ideas, and they use fear to do it, which is basically what a lot of governments and a lot of cultic organizations do. And it makes me wonder, okay, the conspiracy theory guys are going on and on about this and that, that's trying to control people and scare people. And then, well, why are you trying to control and scare me at the same time? So that's what makes it really hard to know what to believe. But I do know that if I listen to mainstream media, right-wing media, left-wing media, and talk to as many people and get as many ideas as I can, I'm going to get a partial picture of what's really going on, what's really going to happen. And I have to keep an open mind about all that stuff. And at the same time, know that there very well could be something hidden from the entire world that could very well pull the carpet from under us and make us go, we didn't see that coming, which is something I've felt for the last 4 years. So whether they created this or not, I think there are a lot of people that need an opportunity to gain a lot of power over a lot of people. And I have never been alive in history to where I've seen anything quite like this, to where I've seen anything that could very well, as far as the timing and the technology and everything, that could really infiltrate the rights, the freedom, and the privacy of not just America, North America, Western culture, but really the whole world. And at the same time, I'm trying to find my faith. And my faith is really hard because of my background of having so much abuse when it comes to, hyper-aggressive religion on, the right wing, and the hyper-passive type religious cultures on the left wing. And basically just feeling overpowered by most of this stuff in my life and being very disillusioned by it. And focusing more on Well, whatever's going on is causing things to be out of balance. And if you look at nature, not just on Earth, but in our universe, things do eventually come to a place of balance, to a place of perfection. There's chaos that somehow evolves over time into something that is peaceful and balanced. And that is my hope, that eventually this will all come to a place of balance and peace. It's just that at this point, things are really getting stirred up. And the pendulum has been like this when it comes to extremes. And now it's just nuts. And it's going to take a long time for this thing to create some kind of equilibrium. And in the meantime, it's really hard to cope with this, especially living with debilitating mental disorders, trauma, and a lot of the stuff that I live with. And at the same time, I think that people who are confronted with all this, germ conscious stuff and paranoia of corporations and governments right now aren't used to that, and they're going to have to cope with it, and they're not used to coping with this stuff. And I've been used to coping with this stuff for a long time. So in some ways, it's harder for me to deal with an increase of crazy around me when I've already had this stuff in my head. At the same time, though, I have survived suicide, and self-harm and things like that make me feel like I could get through this. And if things get really, really, really messed up, like if it starts to be where there is a military effort that is affecting me directly, that's probably my worst fear right now. Just because if I'm, herded off like cattle, this is not going to be a time where they're going to ask me if I have any special needs. Do I have any dietary needs? Do I have any mental health needs? No. When it comes to, some type of crisis where they're going to have to ship people in herds and big massive things and putting them in places to keep them safe from other people or to control them and things like that, that is my worst fear right now. And I've thought about these things over the years, and I just say, well, hopefully that'll never happen. And if there ever is a time in my life when this is more plausible than ever, it's now. And that is a tough thing to deal with. And that's why it's good for me to communicate this and to be open and honest with folks. And then put it aside and say, well, right now I'm safe. And I'm grateful for what I have. And also the fact that I have resources right now that a lot of people don't have. And I need to be thankful for that. And at the same time, I'm really glad to be able to be stuck in one place so I could get some work done because I've been so distracted. So, hopefully this will give me some opportunities to do more videos, and hopefully it won't take an hour because I have so much to catch up on. I've had so much on my mind lately. But it's taken me hours to figure out just how to get my microphone working with my new phone, and it took me a couple weeks just to find the right kind of way to get online, and it's just frustrating dealing with companies, especially when I don't trust folks. And I seem to demand more respect than I used to the older I get. And it's really freaking me out how people do business these days. And things are changing so fast. And I think that there is a couple things going on, is that people are generally freaking out more than they are and more than they have been, I guess. And at the same time, there is a lot of effort being made to demonstrate compassion on those And I think that's the good that can come out of a crisis, is that it seems to reveal people that are sincere. It also reveals people that aren't sincere. And I wouldn't mind listening to Bible people as much as I listen to folks in hyper-educated circles. Just because there are seers and mystics in every religion, and some of them have been able to tap into something that is beyond the natural in order to see things that are maybe warnings, or maybe they are seeing things to come. And so I like to keep an open mind with some of that as well. And it could be that by the end of this year that what we thought was America, what we thought was these borders could very well change. Our freedoms could very well change. And it could very well be that we are mandated to sign up for things that we don't have a lot of choices, that we have to line up and we have to do something in order to feel like we have to. And that's when things are really going to change, and America will end up being a lot more like North Korea because of a cultic mentality. And I see that happening more and more. So just trying to be positive with all that, trying to be realistic, and trying to cope day to day and find a balance with all that.